pink bakery box was still warm against my palms when my niece looked me dead in the face, said, "I'm going to tell my mom you made me cry on purpose." And I just stood there in my damp socks, saying nothing. My name is Colette. I am 35, and I coordinate corporate events for a hotel group outside Grand Rapids, which means I spend most of my life making sure other people feel accommodated before they even realize they want something. I am good at reading rooms. I am good at smoothing edges. I am good at hearing tension before it speaks. That morning, standing in my older brother's lake house kitchen with cinnamon in the air and the coffee maker still sputtering, I had the first sharp feeling that I was no longer dealing with a tired kid in a bad mood. I was dealing with someone trying to see if my no actually meant no. The weird part is that the whole thing started in a house full of soft things: folded beach towels, board games stacked under the television, wet sandals by the back door, half-zipped duffel bags waiting for the drive home. It was the last morning of a long holiday weekend, and everyone had that slightly frayed, overfamiliar energy families get when they have been together just a little too long. My brother, Sterling, had invited a cluster of us to the lake for the long weekend. He had to leave early that morning to meet a contractor back in the city, and his wife had taken their youngest to urgent care the night before for an ear infection that turned out to be nothing serious but dramatic enough to keep her away until late morning. So, for a few hours, the house was mine to manage. That was not unusual. In my family, I am the one people trust with logistics. I make the schedule. I remember the sunscreen. I check the weather. I know who eats gluten-free and who gets carsick on winding roads. I am the person everyone jokes should have been born holding a clipboard. Usually I do not mind. My niece Waverly was 11, Sterling's daughter. Pretty, bright, funny when she wanted to be. She also had a new habit I had been noticing all weekend, where every request came wrapped in a challenge, not open defiance exactly, more like a small, polished performance of innocence. If she wanted the paddleboard someone else was using, she did not ask. She sighed until an adult noticed. If she did not like the movie everyone picked, she curled up dramatically on the couch and asked whether anyone cared that she hated scary things now, even though the movie was not scary, and she had chosen it herself the month before. If she was told to wait, she heard insult. I had seen it. I had also seen everyone around her adjust. Her mother especially. There are children who test boundaries because they are tired or overstimulated. Then there are children who test boundaries because they have learned that boundaries are opening offers. By Monday morning, I was starting to suspect which kind Waverly was becoming. The others were easy. My younger cousin Phoebe was helping gather towels. My brother's son Hudson was carrying bags to the mudroom one at a time because he liked having jobs. My cousin's girl, Ruby, was sitting on the counter in an oversized camp sweatshirt, peeling the paper off a juice bottle and humming to herself. It should have been simple. I had driven to the bakery just after sunrise because I did not want to cook before a 3-hour cleanup and a round of departures. The place near the marina makes pastry boxes on holiday weekends. You choose a set assortment and they add one specialty item depending on what came out right that morning. It is a nice system if you are feeding a crowd. Efficient, thoughtful, safe. I brought back 2 boxes and set them on the island. The first one had muffins, croissants, and fruit danishes. The second had cinnamon twists, apple hand pies, and 1 raspberry cheese braid with white icing, the kind that looks almost too pretty to touch. That braid turned out to be the problem. I did not announce it like a prize. I did not hold it up. I just opened the lids and said, "All right. Pick one first, and do not touch something unless you're taking it." Ruby was closest. She looked at everything for about 2 seconds, pointed to the raspberry braid and said, "That one looks fancy." "Then take it," I told her. She smiled, slid it onto a napkin and hopped down. That should have been the end of it. Waverly came in maybe 10 seconds later, stopped in front of the counter, and froze. Why did she get that one? Her voice was not loud yet, just sharp enough to change the air. I was pouring coffee into a travel mug. Because she picked first. Waverly stared at Ruby's plate like something had been stolen from a museum. I wanted that. Ruby, poor thing, looked up mid-bite, already guilty for existing wrong. I stepped in before that look could land anywhere. "There are plenty left. Pick what you want." "I don't want those." There were at least 5 pastries still untouched in that box, plus the entire other box. I kept my tone even. "Then you can wait a minute and decide." She folded her arms. "No, I wanted the braid." "I know, so tell her to trade." That was the first moment I felt that cold little click inside me. Not anger yet, recognition. Ruby lowered her pastry slowly. "I can just have something else." "No," I said, before Waverly could hear that surrender as success. "You chose. You're fine." Waverly turned to me, and the expression on her face was so much older than 11 that it actually made me uneasy, not because it was cruel, because it was calculating. "I'm your family," she said. "She's just here because Aunt Phoebe came with her." A silence opened in the kitchen. Ruby's face changed immediately. Not tears. Worse, that blank little shutdown kids get when they are trying not to be embarrassed in front of other people. I set my mug down. "Do not talk like that," I said. Waverly shrugged one shoulder. "It's true." "No. I said more quietly now. What's true is that someone picked first, and you do not get to make another child feel small because you're disappointed. Hudson had come in by then. Phoebe too. Nobody spoke. They just looked at me, then at Waverly, then at the pastry on Ruby's napkin like it had somehow become a live wire. Waverly blinked at me, then gave this tiny disbelieving laugh. You're being weird over a pastry. And that was the moment I understood that if I backed down even an inch, the rest of the morning was going to belong to her. If you're listening from somewhere in the world, take a second to like, subscribe, and comment your city, state, country, or just your first name. All right, now let me take you back. Because what happened next was not really about breakfast. It was about what Waverly had been practicing all weekend, what I had been noticing without naming, and the exact second I realized she had learned how to turn adults into witnesses for their own disrespect. I looked at the counter, then at the kids, then back at her. You have two choices, I said. Pick something that is here, or wait until lunch. What you are not going to do is pressure her out of what she already chose. Her eyes filled so fast it would have fooled almost anyone. Almost. She took one breath, put the back of her hand under one eye without a single tear on it, and said very carefully, I knew you were going to do this when Mom wasn't here. The sentence hung in the kitchen for half a second, thin and poisonous. Nobody moved. I had spent enough years around conference tables and wedding families and panicked executives to know when someone was throwing a line into the room just to see who would catch it. That was one of those lines. It was not random. It had shape, rehearsal. It came out too smoothly for a child inventing hurt in real time. Ruby looked at me with that wide, frightened uncertainty children get when they can tell they are standing near something adult and ugly, but do not understand the rules of it. Hudson shifted his weight and glanced at the back door like he wished he could disappear through it. Phoebe, who was 15 and old enough to read subtext, slowly lowered the stack of paper plates in her hands onto the counter without making a sound. I kept my face still. What do you mean by that? I asked. Waverly sniffed. Nothing. No. You said you knew I was going to do this when your mom wasn't here. Tell me what this is. Her lower lip trembled. It was impressive, honestly. She looked like a child on the edge of being mistreated in a made-for-television movie. You always act nicer when other people are around. Phoebe's head lifted at that, just slightly. A flicker. She had been with me almost all weekend. She knew that was nonsense. I folded the top of the bakery box down so the kids would stop staring at the pastries like they were cursed objects. That is not true. You don't like me. There it was, the move from object to identity. Not I did not get the thing I wanted. Not I feel left out. Straight to you do not like me. It was clever. If I defended myself too hard, I would look guilty. If I got sharp, I would prove her point. So I did what I do at work when someone tries to push a problem into an emotional fog. I went specific. I got up early and drove to town so all of you would have breakfast before the drive home. I opened the boxes and told everyone to choose one. Another child picked first. That is what happened. Waverly shook her head like facts were rude. You let her take the best one because you knew I wanted it. I had not even known Waverly was awake, but I could see the track she was laying. If she could turn the morning into a story about exclusion instead of choice, then everything else would bend around that version. I heard my own pulse once in my ears. Not fast, just present. Go upstairs, I said. That surprised her. It surprised me a little too because my voice came out calm enough to belong to someone else. She blinked. What? Go upstairs. Wash your face. Get dressed for the drive. Come back down when you are ready to speak respectfully. Her mouth opened. No, she said. Not loud. Flat. Testing. I have always found that the most unsettling kind of disrespect is not explosive. It is casual. The kind that assumes your authority is decorative. Phoebe looked down at the counter. Hudson stared openly now. Ruby held her pastry with both hands like it might be taken as evidence. I walked around the island until I was standing across from Waverly. I was not asking. For the first time, something real flashed across her face. Not sadness, not injury, anger. She leaned in a little and said, low enough that the younger kids might not fully catch it. You can't tell me what to do. This isn't your house. There are moments when a room stops being a room and becomes a diagram, every person in it revealing exactly where they believe the lines are. She thought the house belonged to a hierarchy she could use. She thought blood, ownership, and her mother's absence created a loophole. She thought my role was logistical, not real. I took one breath. You are right, I said. It's not my house, but I am the adult in charge of you right now. And you will either go upstairs and cool off, or you will sit in the mudroom with no phone and no audience until your father gets back. Those are your choices. That landed, not because it was loud, because it gave her fewer angles. She looked toward Phoebe, maybe hoping for sympathy. Phoebe gave her nothing. She looked at Hudson, who had already learned the family rule that eye contact can become involvement. Then she looked back at me and laughed a little through her nose. You're doing way too much. Upstairs. For a second I thought she might actually listen. Her shoulders shifted. Her fingers twitched at her sides. Then she did something I had not expected. She grabbed a blueberry muffin from the other box, squeezed it hard enough to split the top, dropped it back onto the tray, and walked out of the kitchen. No slam, no stomp. Just a deliberate act of contempt and the soft sound of bare feet on wood stairs. Nobody spoke until we heard her bedroom door close overhead. Then Ruby whispered, "I'm sorry." I turned to her so fast I probably startled her. "No, absolutely not. You did nothing wrong." She nodded, but she still looked ashamed, which made my chest tighten in a way anger never does. Anger feels hot and clean. Shame by proximity feels sticky, especially when it lands on a child who was simply there first. Phoebe exhaled through her nose. "She's been doing that all weekend." I looked at her. "Doing what?" "That thing." Phoebe reached for a cinnamon twist, where she says something mean, then acts like she's the one being attacked when someone reacts. Hudson, who was 9, and generally saved his words for emergencies in Minecraft, muttered, "She told me yesterday that Dad only lets me steer the boat because I cry if he doesn't." I stared at him. "Did you tell anyone?" He shrugged. "I didn't want it to become a thing." That nearly made me laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was exactly what adults say when somebody difficult has trained the room around their moods. I cleaned up the crushed muffin and set out fresh napkins. I kept breakfast moving. Juice poured, fruit washed, bags zipped. The ordinary sounds returned slowly, but they sounded thinner now, like the kitchen had been stretched. I did not go after Waverly. That was not neglect. It was strategy. When someone is testing whether disruption gives them power, immediate pursuit can feel like proof that they control the emotional temperature. I had learned that with brides, with executives, with one ex-boyfriend I should have left sooner, and apparently now with a child who had started practicing adult manipulation before middle school. So I let the room settle. Sterling texted around then. "Running late," contractor pushed back. "You good?" I stared at the message for a second. There are families where the truth can be texted in real time and trusted to stay intact. Mine is not always one of them. Not because we are liars, because we are interpreters. Everyone wants the generous version until generosity becomes expensive. I typed, "We're fine. Minor breakfast drama. Handle it when you get back." He sent a thumbs up. That, more than anything, told me he had no idea. About 20 minutes later, Waverly came downstairs fully dressed, hair brushed, face composed. If you had just met her then, you would have thought she was the easiest child in the county. She did not look at Ruby. She did not look at me. She opened the fridge, took out a yogurt, and asked Hudson whether he wanted to race rocks to the dock before they left. Hudson looked at me first. It was subtle and it hurt. Children should not have to read adult weather before answering a simple question. I gave him a small nod. "After shoes," he nodded back. Waverly peeled the foil off the yogurt and ate, standing up. Not another word about the pastry. Not another sign of upset, which of course made what she had done more disturbing. Not less. If a child can switch that cleanly from accusation to calm, then the tears were never the point. The point was control. I was rinsing berries in the sink when my phone buzzed again. Not Sterling this time. It was my sister-in-law, Sienna, finally back from urgent care with her little boy, sending a voice note. I wiped my hands and listened. She sounded tired. "Hey, we're about 40 minutes out. Is everyone alive? Also, did Waverly already eat?" She texted me saying there was drama and she doesn't want to be alone with you. For one second I thought I had misheard it. Then I played it again. There it was. She does not want to be alone with you. My whole body went still in a way that felt almost separate from thought. Not fear exactly, something colder. The sensation of a floor shifting by less than an inch, but enough for you to know the whole room is no longer level. Waverly had gone upstairs, gotten dressed, and texted her mother her own version before I had said another word to anyone. I looked over my shoulder. She was standing by the sliding door, spoon in hand, looking out at the lake with her reflection faint in the glass. From where I stood, I could not see her face clearly, just the shape of a girl in a yellow sweatshirt, still as a photograph. And I understood all at once that the pastry had never been the real danger. The danger was how fast she had learned to build a witness before the truth could settle. I did not answer the voice note right away. That was the first good decision I made after the kitchen. Not because I was hiding, because I could feel how easy it would be, in that exact moment, to sound defensive. Defensive people always lose first, especially with something this slippery. If I rushed to explain myself while Waverly's version was still fresh and emotional, I would turn the whole thing into a contest between a composed adult and an upset child. In a family like mine, that is a contest the adult is expected to lose gracefully. So I locked my phone, set it face down by the sink, and kept rinsing berries. A few minutes later, I told Phoebe to help Hudson find his shoes, and asked Ruby if she wanted to pick a playlist for the drive. I gave the room ordinary tasks on purpose. A normal room tells the truth better than an argument does. Then I walked to the mudroom and checked the small camera Sterling kept over the side entry. It caught the driveway and part of the kitchen hallway, mostly for packages and raccoons. No sound, but enough motion to timestamp people coming and going. I was not looking for some dramatic smoking gun. I just wanted sequence, timing, something objective. At the exact minute Waverly had gone upstairs, she stayed there for less than 4 minutes. Then she came back down, paused in the upstairs hall, and texted for almost a full minute before entering the bathroom. I took a screenshot of the time log. Then I checked the family group thread. Quiet. No explosion yet. That told me Sienna had not gone public. Not yet. I finally responded to the voice note with a text. She ate yogurt. There was a conflict over a pastry another child had already chosen. I set a boundary. I'll explain when you get here. No apology, no paragraphs, no pleading language. 3 dots appeared almost immediately, then vanished. A minute later she said you singled her out in front of everyone. I looked through the glass at Waverly again. She was outside now, standing near the dock while Hudson dropped pebbles into the water. From a distance she looked peaceful, thoughtful even. It was a strange thing, to watch a child framed by morning light and know she had already started constructing a case against you before breakfast had fully ended. I corrected behavior in front of the same people she tried to pressure. We can talk when you arrive. That time there was no answer. Sterling got back first. He came through the side door with a coffee in one hand, and his truck keys still looped around 2 fingers, wearing that distracted, half-present expression people get when they are still mentally arguing with a contractor. He smiled at me automatically. How bad was the breakfast drama? Waverly, who had heard his voice from the deck, appeared in the doorway almost instantly. That was micro twist number 1, and I knew it the second I saw her move. Fast, but not rushed. Eyes already bright, shoulders tucked in, not running to her father for comfort. Positioning herself to be seen reaching him first. Dad. Just that, one word, soft. Sterling's face changed on instinct. Concern, immediate and automatic. Hey, what happened? I did not interrupt. That was the second good decision. Waverly looked at the floor. Nothing, it's fine. The oldest trick in the world. Refuse once, invite pursuit. Sterling set his coffee down. Waverly. She shook her head, eyes wet now for real or close enough that it did not matter. I just don't want to talk about it in front of everybody. There it was, the framing. Not I was upset. Not I was wrong. A performance of vulnerability that quietly suggested the room was unsafe because of me. Sterling looked at me confused. Colette, I dried my hands on a dish towel and leaned against the counter. She wanted a pastry Ruby had already taken. I told her no. She then told Ruby she mattered less. Told me I only act nice when people are around. Refused to go upstairs when I told her to cool off. And texted Sienna that she didn't want to be alone with me. The kitchen went very still. Waverly's head snapped up. That's not what I said. I met her eyes. Then your mother can play the message. Sterling looked between us. Wait, alone with you? I watched the understanding hit him in stages. Not the pastry issue. Not even the disrespect. The other thing. The implication. The way those words could stain a room even after they were denied. Waverly stepped closer to him. I said I didn't want to be by myself after she yelled at me. I did not yell at you. I said. You were scary. Phoebe from the hallway spoke before I could. She wasn't. Every head turned. Phoebe stood there holding a duffel strap in one hand. Face pale but steady. You weren't scary. You were calm. I was right there. Waverly's face changed for half a second. Not sadness. Annoyance. She had not expected another witness to step forward. Sterling rubbed one hand over his mouth. Where is Ruby? In the bunk room packing, I said. He nodded once, like he needed that fact for reasons he had not named yet. Then his phone buzzed. Sienna. He answered on speaker without meaning to. Then tried to pull it away, but it was too late. What is going on? She demanded immediately. Waverly is crying and telling me your sister humiliated her in front of everyone over food. Sterling looked at me. I gave a small shake of my head. Do not hand me this. Not yet. He took a breath. I just got back. Well, I would love to hear why my daughter feels uncomfortable in this house. Something in me cooled all the way down at that word. House. As if discomfort was now a legal atmosphere someone had created around her child. Sterling said, more carefully now. Colette says Waverly was pressuring Ruby to hand over something she already picked. Sienna scoffed. She is 11. She wanted a pastry. Why is a grown woman in a power struggle with a child? That landed exactly the way she meant it to. Adult versus child. The facts dissolved. The picture simplified. So I finally stepped closer. Sienna, I said. She went silent for a beat. I'm listening. I did not argue with your daughter over a pastry. I stopped her from targeting another child over one. Those are not the same thing. Nothing. Then, she said you embarrassed her. I corrected her after she tried to use family rank to shame Ruby. Sterling closed his eyes for half a second. He had not known that part. On the phone, Sienna said, Waverly would not say something like that. Waverly stared at the floor. That was the major reveal. Though not the only one. Not that Waverly had said it. I already knew she had. The reveal was that her mother's defense came out too fast. Too clean. Not, what exactly did she say? Not, are you sure? Just immediate refusal. She had heard enough versions of this behavior before to recognize it, and her first instinct was still to protect it. I did not push there. I did not need to. Instead, I said, the side camera shows when she went upstairs and when she texted you. Phoebe witnessed the conversation. Hudson heard part of it. Ruby lived the part that matters most. So we can keep doing feelings, or we can do sequence. You could hear Sienna breathing on the line. Sterling looked at Waverly. Did you tell your mother you didn't want to be alone with Colette before or after you came downstairs and ate yogurt like everything was normal? Waverly's chin trembled. He had chosen sequence too. That was when she made her mistake. Not the first one. The fatal one. She looked up and said, in a small, furious voice, Because nobody ever picks me first. The room changed. That sentence did what evidence alone could not. It exposed motive. Not hunger, not fear, not cruelty from me, something deeper and uglier in the way children feel it, a need to be centered so intense that fairness itself feels like an insult. I saw Sterling's face soften for 1 second with hurt, and then harden in a different place. "Waverly," he said quietly. "That is not what happened." Her eyes widened as if betrayal had just entered the house wearing his face. Sienna came through the door 10 minutes later with the little one asleep against her shoulder, and exhaustion all over her body. She looked from me to Sterling to Waverly, and knew immediately that the ground had shifted without her. We did not do this in the kitchen. That mattered to me. We moved to the screened porch, where the younger kids could not hear every word. Ruby stayed inside with Phoebe and Hudson. I could see them faintly through the glass, sitting at the table with cards spread out, trying too hard to look normal. Sienna sat down carefully and said, "Tell me exactly what happened." So I did. Not emotionally, not theatrically, step by step. Choice, demand, pressure. The comment to Ruby, the refusal, the text, the camera timestamp, Phoebe's witness. When I finished, no one spoke for several seconds. Then Sienna turned to Waverly. "Did you tell Ruby she mattered less because she wasn't immediate family?" Waverly whispered. "I didn't mean it like that." "That is not an answer." Waverly's eyes filled again. I was upset. Sienna looked at her for a long moment, and I watched a mother struggle between two instincts in real time. Protect the child, correct the child. If she chose the first one again, she would lose more than this argument. Finally, she said, "You do not get to turn discomfort into accusation every time someone tells you no." Silence. A bird hit the railing lightly and flew off. Waverly started crying then, real crying this time, messy, angry, humiliated, 11 years old again instead of briefly 40. I did not enjoy it. That is the thing people do not say enough about boundaries. When they finally work, they are rarely fun, just necessary. Sienna made her apologize to Ruby first, not a soft little "if your feelings were hurt" apology. A real one. Eye contact. Specific words. Ruby accepted it with the stiff dignity of a child who had already aged slightly in one morning. Then Waverly had to apologize to me. She stood in the doorway of the porch, arms folded so tightly it looked painful, and said, "I'm sorry I lied." I nodded once. "Thank you." I did not rescue her from the discomfort. That was part of the lesson too. The day unraveled after that in the ordinary way days do. Bags loaded, water bottles found, chargers hunted down, hugs in the driveway. The air went back to being summer air, but there was one last turn. When everyone was almost ready to leave, Phoebe came over and quietly handed me her phone. "I think you should keep this." It was a screenshot from the night before, a group text between the girls about the next morning's bakery run. I had not seen it because, of course, I was not 11 and not in that thread. Ruby had texted, "I hope there's another raspberry braid this year." Waverly had replied, "If there's only one, I'm getting it. I don't care if I have to make it weird." I stared at the screen for a long second. Not because it changed the outcome. By then the truth was already standing in daylight. It was the small final twist. The line that proved the whole thing had not only been manipulation, it had been intention, practice. A child experimenting with what power she could create if she made enough adults uncomfortable. I did not show it to Sterling or Sienna. I did not need to. Some evidence is for the verdict. Some is for your own peace. I handed the phone back to Phoebe and said, "Keep that, not to punish her. Just in case anyone tries to rewrite today later." Phoebe nodded like she understood more than a 15-year-old should. When the cars finally pulled away, the house fell quiet in stages. Gravel, engine noise, then wind in the trees, then the soft mechanical tick of the cooling oven. I went back inside to clear the counter. The bakery boxes were still there. Napkins, paper cups, a half-empty fruit bowl. And in the corner of the second box, untouched from the moment the argument ended, sat the blueberry muffin Waverly had crushed with her hand. Not ruined enough to throw dramatically, not whole enough to want, just damaged because someone had been told no. I stood there looking at it, and I thought about how many families confuse accommodation with love until they raise a child who cannot tell the difference. So I threw it out, wiped the icing smear off the counter, locked the side door, and left the house quieter than I found it. Some mornings tell you exactly who is trying to run the room. This one taught her she couldn't. Sometimes the hardest people to correct are not the loud ones. It is the ones who know how to make everything look soft. That kind of behavior can fool a room for a long time, especially when the person doing it is young or emotional, or knows exactly which words make adults panic. And this is the part people miss. A boundary is not meanness just because somebody cries when they hit it. That does not make the boundary wrong. It just means it was real. I think a lot of families get scared of being seen as harsh, so they start rewarding performance over honesty. Then one day they wake up and realize the child is not upset because they were harmed. They are upset because control did not work. That is a dangerous lesson if it goes unchecked. You do not have to explode to stop it. You do not have to humiliate anybody. You just have to stay steady long enough that the truth has somewhere to stand. That is usually the hardest part. Staying steady. Anyway, That one stayed with me. Not because of the pastry, because of how fast a small test can become a much bigger warning.